Competency 4. The teacher understands learning processes and factors that impact the student learning and demonstrates this knowledge by planning effective, engaging instruction and appropriate assessments. The beginning teacher incorporates students' different approaches to learning, for example, auditory, visual, tactile, kinesthetic, and instructional practices. So for process evidence, I created another artifact that explains the different approaches to learning. So visual learners learn optimally through observation. They like to see visual stimuli, so tables, graphs, and pictures. Auditory learners learn and understand information best through listening. Tactile, there's two types. Some prefer to touch or manipulate objects, and others find that taking notes or drawing helps to encode the information. As y'all can probably tell from my artifacts, I really like to take notes and write things out. That's what really helps me learn. And then kinesthetic, they need to move their bodies, so activities and movement help them to engage in information. And then I have a book, it's titled You're Smarter Than You Think, A Kid's Guide to Multiple Intelligences, and it was written by Thomas Armstrong. And so he talks about the different types of intelligences. There's word smart, music smart, logic smart, picture smart, body smart, people smart, self smart, nature smart, and life smart. And he goes through and explains each one of these intelligences and examples of them. And then he also tells how to be more life smart, or how you can be more nature smart, and gives examples of that as well. So this is definitely an interesting book. You can have it in your classroom for your students to look at, and there's quizzes that they can fill out to see what qualities they have that make them word smart and what make them music smart. So it's kind of cool to see the different type of multiple intelligences in the classroom. So that was my process evidence artifact. And the reasoning behind that is that the first step in teachers' planning instruction is understanding the different types of approaches that students learn. So if we don't know which of our students need auditory or visual or tactile or kinesthetic activities, then it's going to be hard for us to plan effective instruction because we don't know what they need. So for my product evidence, I provided some examples of surveys that you can hand out at the beginning of the year to understand how they work best and what types of learning they work best with. So they can fill these out. And if they're little, like first grade or kindergartners, you can either do a classroom interview with them or else just talk to them one-on-one to see what they like and how they work best. This one was your learning style. And these are all found on Pinterest. And then here's the third one. So you could do all three of these or choose one. But I thought that these were really interesting and useful. So understanding how our students work best and how they learn is going to ensure success for the teacher and the students. And these surveys are quick and effective, and they can also be used to assess your students. So you might want to do them a few times throughout the year. Start at the beginning, see what the students think that their learning styles are like, and then they might end up changing, especially in the elementary years because they're still kind of learning about themselves. So it's a good assessment method as well. And then my performance evidence, I created another lesson and posted it on my little blog. It is titled Candy Bar Fractions. And teaching students fractions is tricky because it's an abstract learning process for them. So I created a lesson that reaches out to students' different approaches to learning. This isn't a lesson that you'd want to start out with when you're just teaching fractions, but it is a good one to include when they kind of have a basic understanding of fractions. And I included the T because this is a second grade lesson. So the first step is to read the students a short story about a man named Sylvester. And Sylvester has some different candy bars and he shares them with his friends in the story. So you can see one of these, it's a coconut marmalade chocolate bar, and he shares it with 2 of his friends. And then he explains that he has to break his candy into 3 equal pieces, 1 for him and then 2 for his friends, so that they each have a piece of the candy. So those are some examples of the candy in the story. And then after that, you tell the students that they're going to create their own candy bar to share with their friends. And they need to give it an interesting name. And then use colored pencils, crayons, and or markers to decorate their candy bar. And then once each student has completed their candy bar, you can have the students find classmates that share the same birthday month or that are all wearing blue shirts. You can mix it up however you would like, but for my example, I did birthdays. So for example, if the students' birthdays are in June, they have to walk around, find other June birthdays, and then once they're grouped together, they have to share their candy bars. So if there's 4 people in the June group, they have to figure out how to cut each person's candy bar into 4 pieces. If there's only 1 person in, say, July, explain to the student that their candy bar would remain a whole, that they're not having to break it up. And then if there's 2 students, ask them to identify the fraction and guide the students to understand that it would be halves. You need to really guide their thinking so that they're identifying and differentiating between wholes, halves, thirds, and fourths, because that's a huge part of the second graders and their learning fractions. So I gave an example of my candy bar that I created. So it's Marvelous Ms. Ford's Delicious Raspberry Marshmallow Chocolate Bar. And then there were 3 people in my group, so I had to cut it up into 3 equal fractions, so it's in thirds. So this activity accommodates the visual learners because they see their candy bar and they visualize how to cut it up into equal parts. It's good for auditory learners because they're listening to a story about fractions. It's great for the tactile and kinesthetic learners because they're cutting up their candy bar and they're using it as a manipulative to understand fractions. So they get to touch it and move it, and that way they can understand how the fractions work. And they get to walk around, which is good. So it's important to reach every student's needs and understand that they do not all learn the same way. We must differentiate our instruction in order for our students to be successful. And that was my performance evidence. And so part of being a teacher is being able to come up with ways to accommodate all of our students in our lessons. There are resources available to us, such as Pinterest. There's so many different blogs that teachers have that have really good ideas on there as well. So we're not having to reinvent the wheel every time. It has kind of been done for us. But it is fun to be able to create our own lessons and to use our creativity. So our first step in giving students instruction is to find out what their approach to learning is and how they learn best. There might be students in our class that are mainly visual learners, and so we need to make sure that we're using visual parts of our lesson to accommodate them. But then we also need to make sure that we're accommodating the kinesthetic learners and the tactile learners so that everyone is exposed to the same experiences. And that's kind of part of being a teacher, is being able to understand what our students need and being able to meet those needs. So I did include in there that I do want to teach kindergarten or first grade, and so I need to make sure I'm including a lot of tactile and kinesthetic activities for my students, because that is proven to be the most effective way that they learn and store information, because they're little and that's just a proven way of how the little ones can learn information and encode it. So when teachers understand how to plan instruction that accommodates all the students and their different approaches to learning and multiple intelligences, they there's going to be much success in the classroom. And that is competency 4.